Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah, now it's on. Yes, thanks. Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah, now it's on. Yes, thanks. Okay, thank you. Yeah, now it's on. Yes, thanks. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Sorry for the delay. There has been some technical issues. Anyway, we are starting straight away. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So thank you for your patience. Okay. So we are starting our next textbook today. In the past week, we have completed Standard 9 NCERT, and today we are moving on to Standard 10. All right. So this is actually a part of the ongoing NCERT series. I have started from Standard 6th onwards. We have completed 6th, 7, 8, 9, and now we are in the 10th standard. All right. So by the end of this week, this textbook also will be covered. And from the next week, we will see Standard 11. And after that, we will complete the Standard 12 textbook. Okay. So by the end of this series, the entire NCERT history textbooks will be covered for your civil service examination. Alright. So this is both useful for your prelims as well as mains. Okay. This is not exclusively for prelims or anything. It's useful for both of these examinations. So yeah, that's it. We can begin our session for the day. So class 10 World History, India and the Contemporary World 2. Okay. So before we begin, let me just introduce you about Unacademy. Unacademy is India's largest learning platform which offers you a wide variety of things. You have daily live classes where you can chat with the educator, ask your doubts, clear your queries, etc., etc. So live tests and quizzes where you can evaluate yourself, see where you stand, and then learn more and more from there. Structured courses are actually something that is designed based on your syllabus. Okay, so once you get a subscription, you will be able to go through a structured course, which means the entire syllabus for the examination will be covered, unlike individual videos from here and there. But as a timely fashion, the entire thing will be done. And you will have unlimited access to all Unacademy resources relevant for your examination. So in order to get all these, first thing to do is download Unacademy Learning app from Google Play or App Store. And yeah, this is about me. I am Madhav Sankar R Warrier. In order to get my class notes, PDFs, etc., please subscribe to this Telegram channel. Okay, t.me/msrw1, so that you can get all the class notes, schedules, links, etc. Also follow me here, unacademy.com/@msrw. Here I am actually taking a session on world history. Okay, we have already completed some 11 lectures there. Today we will be seeing World War 2. And this session will be at 8 p.m. in Unacademy app. Okay, so you can join me there also. The session is actually free, so everybody with this link can join. Okay, now Unacademy brings you all these top educators from all over India, and yeah, these are the basic subscription packages. So far whatever I have told you is available to you in the plus package, which is the basic package. Okay, so for plus package there are multiple bundles, and out of which a typical 1 year package of 12 months will cost you about 49,500 rupees. Okay, but if you use my code MSRW1, you can avail a 10% deduction and has to pay only 44,550 rupees. Okay, so for all these packages, remember, upon using my code, you will get a 10% off. Also, for all the packages that is 6 months or greater, you can avail no cost EMI facility. Okay, EMI facility is available for paying the fees, so you can use that as well. Now, there is something called Iconic subscription. This is tailor-made for UPSC CSE students, and this is immensely good for your preparation, because over and above the plus package, you will also be getting a personal coach, daily mains answer writing practice, study planner, personalized feedback sessions, etc., etc. Okay, so a personal coach means somebody like a trainer or a guide, like a one-on-one kind of thing. Okay, so this will be provided to you in the iconic subscription. 1 year subscription rate is 69,500. Again, upon using my code MSRW1, you can avail 10% reduction. Clear? So make sure to grab a subscription. Unacademy provides you some optional courses as well, not just limited to whatever you see in this slide. There are many other optionals as well, but these are the prominent ones. PubBad is there, PSIR, sociology, history, etc., etc. So the chart rate for optional courses are as shown here. 1 month it is 5,000, 1 year it is 27,500. Here also it is same thing. If you use my code MSRW1, you can avail 10% off. Okay, so that is it regarding Unacademy subscription plans. If you have any queries regarding how to get a subscription, etc., etc., you can ask me and I will help you through it. Okay, so yeah, please do take a look at my Unacademy channel, where I will be taking classes tonight at 8 p.m. Okay, so that is it. Hi Leah, welcome. Okay, before we begin, let me just tell you, if you have any queries in between, you can actually put it in the YouTube live chat. I will be looking into it after the end of some 2 slides or something like that. Okay, I won't be constantly looking into that. After some 1 or 2 slides, I will look into it and then answer your query. Okay. So part 1 of the 5, standard 10th textbook, we are going to see section 1, events and processes. Okay. Yes. So the rise of nationalism in Europe. Alright. So in this lesson, we will actually see what all happened in the medieval Europe, what all happened since the French Revolution, how the European politics changed, how was the map of Europe redrawn. Okay, what did Napoleon do to enhance all these things? So all these things are actually, given in a very, superficial manner in your NCERT Standard 10 textbook. We are not going into depth or anything. I have already taken chapters like French Revolution, unification of Italy, unification of Germany, all these things in the world history classes. Okay, in my Unacademy channel. You can go back and watch it if you want a, much depthier class. This one is based on NCERT alone, so I will be sticking it to that. Okay, so the rise of nationalism in Europe. So in 1848, there is a very famous French artist known as Frederic Soriot. Alright, and he made a painting which had actually 4 prints. Okay, 4 different prints were there for his painting, and this painting was based on democratic and social republics. Okay, these terminologies are very important because we are going to see these words throughout this chapter. Democratic and social republics. So you can see the painting here. Okay, so in this painting, just observe this painting. Okay, I mean, these kinds of images will stick into your mind, so it will be easier for you to do better during the examination. Okay, so just concentrate on this image. As you can see, there is Jesus Christ and other angels watching from the heaven. There is people from all sorts of life marching towards somewhere, and there is this various colors of flags are there. This is the German flag, for example. Here we have France, Italy. Okay, various flags can also be seen in this picture. So predominantly this artist Frederic Soriot actually tries to bring out what happened in Europe around this time. Okay, people are actually replacing monarchies with democracies, replacing monarchies with republics. Okay, so what is a monarchy? What is a republic? Okay, monarchy is a government where the head is actually the ruler, actually the king. Okay, it is hereditary in nature, which means after the death of the king, the son will become the next king, and then his son will become the next king. This is known as a monarchy. As far as a republic is concerned, the head of the nation is actually elected. For example, India. In India, the president of India is elected. Okay, directly or indirectly, that doesn't matter, but still that position is elected and it is not hereditary. Okay, so that is the difference between a monarchy and a republic. So in the European nations around this time, in the 18th century, we see that a lot of monarchies are actually replaced by republics, also called nation states. Okay, so because of all these happenings in Europe, most of the fine arts or most of the performances in the field of art in this time was based on concepts such as liberty, equality, fraternity, democracy. Okay, so these were the common themes in this period in Europe. All right, so this is also the time when we see the emergence of nation state in place of multinational dynastic empires of Europe. This is what I told you. What is a nation state? We will talk about later. Don't worry. I will explain all of this. This is basically an introduction. Okay. So what we are seeing in this chapter is what I have said so far. We are going to see how monarchies are replaced by republics and nation states. Okay. We will see that there was a revolution in France, and after this French Revolution, French king was replaced by Napoleon Bonaparte. Then we will see that there is something else in Germany that is happening. Then something else in Italy. Okay, in the Ottoman Empire. So in all these places, we will see significant changes in the polity, in the society, etc., etc. We will see the emergence of a separate class of people. Okay, so we are going to see what all are happening in the European setup around this time. All right. Hello, Seema, welcome. Voice for democracy, yes, raised in the same era, Anand, correct. But you have to understand that even before this, in ancient, very earlier than this, in Greece or in the Roman Empire, there was this form of democracy. But that democracy doesn't mean universal adult franchise or anything. That democracy was confined to, wealthy people based on property qualifications, etc., etc. But that was the first form of democracy in Rome, in Greece at that time. Okay, so here we are going, after this, in the medieval times, something happened in Europe known as Renaissance. You might have studied this, Renaissance, Reformation, then Enlightenment. Okay, as a result of all these things, Europe started to, become more modernized, more and more technologically advanced. And then came the Industrial Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution, the pace of advancement increased. Okay, so this is the time when we actually see real democracies where everybody starts to get voting rights, universal adult suffrage. All these new ideologies comes only around this time. Clear? Anyway, we will be looking into that in detail. So let's start in a orderly fashion. So first is the French Revolution and the idea of nation. So here is the start of the new era in France. Okay, we will think it is Britain or we will think it is some other nation, but it was France where the new concept actually emerged. Clear? So the first clear expression of nationalism was the French Revolution of 1789. I will just give you a very brief story, otherwise you won't understand any of these things. Okay, this story is not given in your NCERT, but it is required for you to imbibe what is written. So in France, what happened is the French king. Okay, the France was ruled by Louis XVI. Okay, so Louis XVI and his wife Antoinette were ruling France as monarchies. Around this time, the price of food materials in France increased. Okay, people cannot even afford food materials to eat. Unemployment rate was extremely high. Okay, lots and lots of people who did not had a job. And the entire country or the entire society was facing misery. Clear? At this time, the French king and the French queen was living luxuriously, extravagantly. Okay, so people started protesting against them. Okay, this is the setup. And this protest, which starts, slowly, gradually progresses into a huge revolution, which actually topples the monarchy and replaces it with a democratic form of government. This revolution is known as French Revolution. This is the setup. Okay, so this happened in the year 1789, and this eventually led to the transfer of sovereignty from the monarchy to the body of French citizens. Clear? So the ideas of la patrie. Okay, la patrie means the fatherland. Just like India is our motherland. So similarly in France, France is considered as a person, a male. So it is fatherland, not motherland. Okay, so the la patrie, the fatherland, les citoyen, the citizen. So these concepts started emerging now. Earlier during the monarchy, we had the king and we had the subject. We won't say citizenship as far as a monarchy is concerned. In a monarchy, it is a subject. The king rules his subjects, not his citizens. The concept of citizen is closely related to republics and democratic governments. Clear? So these kinds of ideologies came up around this period. Okay. Also, the people started, to come united as a nation. People started hoisting their own flags, etc., etc. So how did this happen? I mean, the monarchy was overthrown. Then how did the people set up this kind of a government, this form of a government? What they did is, during the revolution, while the revolution was going on, the king, the French king, called in a council or called in an assembly. Okay, this assembly had representatives from all classes of French people. Okay, all classes of French people. And this assembly is known as Estates General. Okay, this is also not given in your NCERT, but this word is there. So without explanation, you won't understand what this is. Let me just give you a very brief understanding. French society or French, hello Abhishek, welcome. French society is actually divided into 3 layers. Okay, it is actually a hierarchy like this. 1, 2 and 3. This is how French society is made. In the first tier, this is known as first estate. First estate. Okay, here we have the second estate. Okay, and here is the third estate. So this is the 3 estates in a hierarchical fashion. The first estate had clergy. You know what clergy is, na? High funda bishops and church people. These are the clergy, the religious superpowers. Then in the second estate, we have nobles. Nobles means wealthy landlords and people who are occupying very important positions in the French monarchy. Okay, and in the third estate, we had all kinds of people. Peasants are there, craftsmen were there, minor church people were there. Okay, this is the common man or the third estate. Clear? So this was the organization. So what happened was, king called this assembly, which had representatives from all these people. First estate, second estate and third estate. The condition in this assembly is that if a vote has to happen or if some decisions has to be taken, then at least 2 of these estates should vote in favor of that decision. Okay, 2 of these estates should vote in favor. So each estate had 1 vote. Okay, so totally 3 votes. At least 2 has to agree to a decision if that has to be passed. Clear? So what happened now? At this time, the treasury of France became empty. Alright, I mean the prices are increasing, people had no money, unemployment, etc., etc. So the treasury of France became empty. So king decided to tax the people in order to get more money. People are already suffering, they are already in misery. And the French king actually thought about taxing these people. Clear? So that was the agenda of this assembly on that day, on the time of Estates General. So what happened? The common man was the only category which was to be taxed. This is a particularity in France. In France, first estate and second estate people are not taxed. Okay, only third estate people are taxed, which means common man. Okay, so during this assembly, third estate people, the common man, knew that the first and second estate will vote in favor of this bill. Correct, right? I mean, they do not have to pay anything, so they will definitely vote for a new tax. So third estate people knew that if that assembly was allowed to move on, then they will have to pay a new tax. Okay, so these people went to the king and said that we need more vote. Okay, I mean you need to conduct this as a universal adult, as a rather than 1 vote for 1 estate, it should be 1 vote for each person. Okay, 1 vote for each person, so that this 2/3 will not come. And there is a chance that French people, the actual common man, can have their say in the assembly. But king said no. It is an established tradition and it has to be followed as such. Okay, one vote, one estate. So 2 by 3, if that bill gets 2 by 3 votes, it will be carried on. So the king rejected the common man's pleas. Alright, so what did the people do? The third estate walked out of this assembly. Okay, I mean, just like our opposition leaders do around these days, they walked out of the Estates General and they went to a nearby tennis court. Okay, there was a tennis court just near the Estates General Hall. So they together assembled there and took an oath. They said that this third estate is the actual representatives of French people. Okay, they said to themselves that we are the representatives of French people. We are the real representatives of the French people. And therefore, we are going to form a national assembly of our own. Okay, this was the oath. And this oath came to be known as Tennis Court Oath. Okay, Tennis Court Oath. You might have heard about this very well. The reason why this oath is named as Tennis Court Oath is simply because it was conducted in a tennis court. That is it. Alright, so a national assembly was formed. It got very much popularity and eventually the French king had to submit to their demands. Clear? So this was the French Revolution, and what happened is a constitution for France was made after this National Assembly. Okay, so eventually some more events are there in the French Revolution that is not under our syllabus. So anyway, French Revolution ended with the monarchy being replaced by republican form of government. Okay, now a centralized administrative system was demanded by the people. Internal customs duties and such things were to be abolished. Uniform systems for weights and measures has to be made. So they wanted a new kind of standardization. They want to change the society completely. Okay, they wanted these kinds of radical changes. Why? Because there were customs duties within different internal regions that was hampering their trade. Okay, without a centralized form of administration, it is extremely difficult for people to comply with different rules in different places. If it is a centralized system, then everybody the same rule will apply. Everywhere the same rule will apply. So they wanted, the mob of the French people demanded all these things. Okay, so what happened was, in the end, as I told you, the French monarchy was overthrown and a republic was made in France. When this happened in France, every other European nation also wanted the same. Okay, I mean, other European nations, the people in those nations also wanted their own democracies, their own republics. They wanted to overthrow their monarchies. Okay, but at the same time, the other monarchs in Europe, the king of Austria, the king of the Habsburg Empire, the king of Germany, these people were afraid. Why? Because if in France the French king can be overthrown, then they are also in trouble in their country. Now, I mean, their people will one day protest against them and they will be overthrown. Clear? So this French Revolution actually inspired various other revolutions across Europe. So it all began in France. Okay, the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity. You might have heard of this quote: liberty, equality, fraternity. This is the ideals of French Revolution. Clear? These ideals inspired various revolutions across Europe and even was an inspiration for Indian independence movement. People like Tipu Sultan used this, he actually planted a tree called the Tree of Liberty at Srirangapatnam. He joined the Jacobin Club. Okay, so Raja Ram Mohan Roy is another person who is influenced by French Revolution. Alright, so this began to influence different nations across the world. Okay? Okay, if you have any questions in between, you can put it in the YouTube live chat. I will be looking at the end of each slide. Okay, I won't be looking in between, so please wait until that end of that particular slide. Alright. Anyway, different cities in Europe started to look into all this. Jacobin clubs were formed. What is this Jacobin club? Jacobin club is nothing, okay. Jacobins were a group of people in French Revolution. They had a very important role to play in that revolution that is beyond the scope of our discussion for now. Okay, if you want to know more about this, please go and watch my French Revolution video in Unacademy app. That is absolutely free. You can just download the app and watch it. Okay, I have taken a detailed lesson there. So Jacobin clubs were actually a huge part of French Revolution. So similar clubs were set up in various other countries like Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, etc. etc. Okay, so all these led to the development of something called the idea of nationalism. What is this nationalism? Nationalism means the people wanted to unite as a country. Okay, rather than being ruled by some monarch or some king, they wanted to be powerful. They wanted their own nation. So this sense of unity or this sense of ethnicity brought them to a concept known as nationalism. So this is the picture of Europe after the end of Vienna Conference. So what happened was, after the end of French Revolution, a person called as Napoleon Bonaparte came into power in France. You have heard of him, na? Napoleon Bonaparte, a very famous personality. So he became the Council of France. Okay, I mean that position is known as consul, C-O-N-S-U-L. So he became the first consul of France at the end of French Revolution. Okay, so Napoleon Bonaparte was a very mighty ruler. He even managed to make the British, which was a superior power at that time, to be afraid of France. Okay, he was that good a leader. He annexed lots and lots of European countries. He even changed the map of Europe. Okay, but eventually Napoleon was stopped. He was actually defeated in a very famous battle known as Waterloo. Okay, I mean this is also a very famous battle, the Battle of Waterloo, where Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated by a combined army of Prussia, Russia and Britain. Okay, and at the end of this battle, Napoleon lost. He was exiled into a place known as Saint Helena. But he left a legacy in Europe. The most important thing, or one of the most striking thing that he did in Europe was to change the map of Europe. Okay, you can see this Europe now. I mean, this is the Europe. Initially this was the Europe. Okay, before Napoleon and all. After Napoleon, what happened was most of these countries were together. I mean, he annexed everything towards France. Okay, so France became a huge nation and some other minor countries here and there. All right. So the people who convened this, Waterloo battle, I mean, Prussia, Britain and Russia. These three kings or the rulers of these three countries came together in a place known as Vienna. Okay, Vienna is the current capital of Austria. So they convened at a place known as Vienna. So in Vienna, they made some kind of arrangements. They convened a congress or a conference and they made some kind of arrangement that we are going to redraw the map of Europe. Whatever Napoleon Bonaparte has to be undone. Okay, and Europe has to be split into various nationalities. Clear? So this is the result of Congress of Vienna. This is the result of this particular treaty or Treaty of Vienna. Okay, so new countries started coming up. France was confined into a very small country. See, here we can see France. Earlier this was not France. France was occupying a lot of area around this much or maybe even more. Alright, so entire map of Europe was redrawn at the end of Congress of Vienna. Now, okay, so Napoleon, as I told you, came to power in France after the French Revolution. But one of the bad things Napoleon did is he destroyed democracy in France. Okay, after the end of French Revolution, some sort of democracy was set in France. But when Napoleon came to power, he wanted all power to himself. So he destroyed democracy in France. Clear? But he did some good things also. For example, he made something known as the Civil Code of 1804. Okay, in France. This Civil Code is also known by a very familiar name, Napoleonic Code. Okay, Civil Code of 1804 is also known as Napoleonic Code. By this code, he did away with privileges of birth. He did away with inequalities in the society, which means everybody was brought before the law. He secured the right to property. He abolished the feudal system and freed the peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. Clear? So what are all these things? Do you know what the meaning of all these words? I mean, privilege based on birth means birthright. Some people are, if you are born in a noble family, then you are a noble, or you will be getting all these privileges. If you are born in a poor family, you are not getting any privileges. So this is known as the birthright. Okay, so this was abolished. Doesn't matter in which kind of family you are born, as long as everything will be based on merit only, not based on birth. This is one. Then he set up equality before law for all people, for nobles, common man, etc., etc. Then he secured right to property. Earlier, right to property was not secured for everybody. It was only for landlords. Okay, now this was secured for common man as well. He abolished feudal system. What is feudal system? What exactly is feudal system? Feudal system means, in very simple terms, it means landlordism. Okay, feudal system means landlordism. Here, what happens is, there is a landlord and he has many people working for him around his manor or around his mansion. Clear? So, such a form of society is known as a feudal society. So, Napoleon abolished the feudal society that existed in France. He freed the peasants from serfdom and manorial dues. So, what is this serfdom and manorial dues now? Serfdom means nothing. As I told you, in the landlord system, these peasants were actually bonded to that landlord. I mean, they were forced to do bonded labor. Okay, so this system was also abolished. Napoleon actually freed these people. Okay, it was kind of a slavery. Alright, and Napoleon freed these people from serfdom and manorial dues. Then, the guild restrictions were removed. Guild means organizations of various groups. Okay, I mean, if you are a trader, then an organization of a trade group is known as a guild. An organization of artisans is known as an artisan guild. Organization of craft people is together known as a craft guild. That is all. Okay, so he removed all the restrictions that was imposed on them. He improved the transportation and communication systems in the country. Clear? So Napoleon did a lot of good things. But the one bad thing he actually did is destroying democracy and replacing it with the highly centralized power of Napoleon Bonaparte. Clear? But the problem is, in the areas he conquered, okay, the reaction of the local people to the French rule was actually mixed. I told you, Napoleon was an expansionist person. He widened the France empire. Okay, he conquered adjacent countries. He waged many battles against enemies and he managed to annex a lot of Europe into France. Okay, what is the problem now? Some people were extremely happy with him. Why? Initially, actually, everybody was happy with him because he was a champion person who actually brought France out of monarchy. Okay, so in most of the countries in Europe, they also wanted to throw away their king and wanted to, have the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity, etc., etc. Okay, so they were all in favor of a French ruler coming there and invading their country. But once Napoleon annexed these countries, he started imposing various sorts of restrictions in there. Okay, so he, prevented or he curtailed the freedom of expression. He started gagging the press. Okay, so he started oppressing those people who voiced against him. So all these things started to cause resentment from the people against Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, so the reaction of the people were mixed. Also, the new administrative system in most of the countries were actually based on the French system, which means it had lots of, it actually prevented a lot of freedoms, which I have already told you. Right to speech, right to expression, all these things were actually curtailed in the Napoleonic rule. Clear? Also, increased taxation, censorship, forced conscription to the French armies. All these things were looked upon by people as oppressive measures. What is conscription? Conscription means compulsorily all men of a particular age has to work for the army. That is conscription. Okay, I mean Hitler employed this during the Nazi Germany during the time of Second World War. It was compulsory for every male, every able-bodied male in the country between a particular age group to work for the military. Clear? That is known as conscription. So Napoleon imposed all these things in his newly annexed states, and people began to rise against him. Okay. Good evening, Ramkumar. Alright. Now let's see what else is happening in Europe. Okay. So the making of nationalism in Europe. Germany, Italy, Switzerland, okay, were divided into kingdoms, duchies and cantons, whose rulers had autonomous territories. Okay. At this time, there was no country like Germany. I mean, Germany did not exist at this time. Italy also did not exist. Switzerland also was not there. Clear? So instead, Germany was divided into a lot of kingdoms. Italy was divided into a lot of duchies. Duchies means nothing. These all are coterminous. Okay, I mean, it is just different names for various land units. That's all. Okay. So Germany was divided into kingdoms, Italy into duchies, and Switzerland into cantons. Clear? So this was the case around this time. There was no country like called Germany. There was no country called Italy. Eastern Europe, Central Europe were also under autocratic monarchies. Autocratic monarchies means rulers who are controlling the entire thing. I mean, one ruler has the control of the entire thing. Autocracy. His will be implemented throughout the country. There is no word for people. Okay, such a government is known as autocratic monarchy. Alright. Now, we had Habsburg Empire. So I told you about Germany, Italy, Switzerland, then Eastern and Central Europe. Now we have to look at Habsburg Empire. How was this organized? Habsburg Empire was ruled over by Austria and Hungary, included the Alpine regions of Tyrol, Austria and Sudetenland and Bohemia. Okay, so during that time, there was no Austria-Hungary either. Okay, I mean right now we have countries like Austria and Hungary separately. But at that time, all these were together as a one huge empire. This is known as Habsburg Empire. And Habsburg Empire had all these countries within it. Okay, but it also had a huge population of German-speaking people, Italian-speaking provinces, Lombardy, Venetia. Okay, Lombardy and Venetia are actually part of the current Italy. Okay, but at that time, all these were part of the huge Habsburg Empire. So what is the issue here? One single empire has people of different languages, people of different ethnicities, etc. etc. Clear? For example, in Hungary at that time, half of the population spoke the Magyar, while the other half spoke a variety of dialects. Okay, so ethnically also, the people were not the same. In one country, we can see such huge amount of diversity. Okay, but here is a UPSC question, a probable UPSC question for mains. Despite having such kind of diversities, India is still a united country, while in European nations, it eventually led to formation of various other nation states. Okay, elaborate or critically analyze. You can be asked this. I mean, India is a combination of, in India we have 700 plus languages. Okay, and still we have different ethnic kind of people. The South Indians are extremely different from North Indians, who are extremely different from East Indians. Okay, but still we are united as a single nation, while such a form of unity cannot be visualized in Europe. Okay, so you will have to critically evaluate it or analyze this. Such a question can come in UPSC mains. Okay, so say in Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish, Bohemians and Sloves in North, Slovenes in Carniola, Croats to the south, Romans to the east of Transylvania. Doesn't matter, you don't have to study all these things. Just understand that in Europe, lots and lots of different kinds of people existed within the same country. Clear? Which has no logical sense at that time. So the people in these different nations wanted to unite together. Some of the German-speaking people were in Prussia. Some of the German people were in Austria. Some were in, say, Italy. Okay, so these people who had German language as common wanted to unite together. Similarly, Italians wanted to unite together. Similarly, another country, say Austria or Hungary, those people wanted to unite together. Clear? So these kinds of feelings, or commonly known as the nationalism, was encouraged in this time during Napoleon Bonaparte's reign. Okay, Napoleon Bonaparte's annexation of various European nations caused the rise of these kinds of nationalistic feelings. Clear? Now let's see what happened with the aristocracy and the new middle class. I hope the political setup is now clear to you. You do not have to, I mean, in this slide, this is very confusing slide, okay? I mean, you have, Slovenes in Carniola, Croats in south, Romans in the east. You do not have to study exactly like this. You have to understand the broader concept. Okay, I mean, what is happening in Europe? The overall story. That is what I am actually telling you. So you can listen to that. So you'll get a picture. Okay, the big picture. That's all that is required here. Okay, now let's see how the people was, how the society was. We looked into the political aspect now. We looked into the boundaries, etc., etc. Now we have to see how the people lived, especially the aristocracy and the middle class people. So obviously, even this time, the monarchies were still there. Except for France, in most countries, monarchies are still there. So the dominant class of the society was actually the landed aristocracy. Aristocracy means those people who are rich by birth. I mean, noble families and all. Clear? I mean, by traditions, they are actually rich, born to a noble family. That is aristocracy. Okay? And the landed aristocracy was the dominant class. They owned huge estates, huge, mansions, etc., etc. Okay? They spoke French for purposes of diplomacy and in high society. Okay, I mean, ordinary people used, various local dialects, small ethnic languages, etc., etc. But the high class people used this French language. Okay, they were connected with marriage ties. But the problem was they were numerically small in group. Do you remember that picture that I drew in the first slide? Here. See, first estate, second estate, third estate. Third estate had the most number of people. The triangle widens at the bottom. As we move towards up, it means moving towards the nobility, aristocracy, etc. The triangle is shorter. I mean, it is coming to a point, which means that number of people in each level decreases. So here also, the numerically aristocratic people were extremely a small group. Okay, so majority of the population were the peasantry. Okay, peasantry. They did not had a land of their own. They actually worked for other landed class people as tenants. Okay, I mean, even if they had a piece of land of their own, it was very small, not like the aristocratic mansions or anything. Alright, so in Eastern and Central Europe, the pattern of landholding was characterized by vast estates which were cultivated by serfs. I told you about serfdom in the previous slide. So these small peasants or these tenants actually worked for these landlords. Okay, and this system was known as serfdom. I explained this earlier. SERFDOM, serfdom, which is actually a part of landlordism or feudalism. Clear? So around this time or a bit more later, industrialization happened across Europe. It began in England. I have already made a lesson regarding that also. You can watch in Unacademy app. So industrialization happened in England, and what happened? In the second half of 18th century, England started to progress at a very high rate. Okay, I mean, England started acquiring colonies everywhere in the world. Example, India also was a colony of England, and various other countries, some African countries, Latin American countries, etc., etc. And they started to develop at a very high pace. Okay, but other European countries were actually lagging behind at this time. Industrialization did not happen across Europe together. Okay, it started in Britain and then eventually spread to other nations. Okay, so France, Germany, etc. came late only. Clear? So there was a clear lead of Britain at this time, which made Britain one of the superpowers in Europe. Okay, industrialization was one of the prominent things which made Britain a superpower compared to other nations at that time. Okay, but when industrialization happened gradually in other parts of Europe also, a new class of people started emerging. This class of people is known as the middle class, also known as the working class. Okay, I told you earlier we had aristocracy and then we had the poor people or the peasants. But when industrialization happened, more and more peasants started working in industries. They started making money. Okay, so their quality of life increased a bit compared to what it was. Okay, so they started earning more and more money, and although they did not make it to the landlord level or the aristocratic level, still they came somewhere in between. And this newly emerged class of people after the industrialization is known as middle class people or the working class population. Okay, this class of people were educated, were liberal, and here is when the idea of national unity started abolishing aristocratic privileges. Okay, this newly emerged class of people who were working in these industries, they actually cared more about these kinds of ideologies, nationalism, liberty, equality, etc., etc. Because now they are also rich, so they also wanted to live like the aristocracy. So they wanted all the privileges, all the rights, everything that is enjoyed by the aristocracy. So these people started voicing all their concerns. Also, they were educated. Okay, so education made them think, made them more and more reasonable, and they used the power of education to demand all these ideologies: liberty, equality, democracy, etc., etc. So this is the emergence of middle class, and emergence of middle class is one of the biggest reasons that actually led to nationalism and unification of various countries. Okay, so what did the liberal nationalism stand for? I told you, due to the emergence of this middle class, liberal nationalism or this feeling of nationalism started emerging. What exactly did it stand for? Or what exactly did the people ask for? Okay. Alright. So the ideas of national unity was forged. Ideology of liberalism was also common to this. What is liberalism? I hope you know what liberalism is. There are two ideologies. One is conservatism and other is liberalism. Conservative means being traditional. Okay, I mean sticking to the past or sticking to what the current establishment is. That is conservative. Clear? Liberalism means open to new ideologies. I mean, they wanted equality. They wanted to accept these modern ideologies. They wanted change. That was liberal. Okay, so these are the two opposing ideologies. So when ideas of national unity or nationalism emerged, people also started talking about ideology of liberalism. Clear? So for the new middle class, liberalism stood for freedom of the individual, equality of all before law, government by consent, inviolability of private property, and did not necessarily stand for universal franchise. Clear? So this point here actually tells you what liberty at that time meant. Okay, liberty of modern day and liberty of the 19th century or the 18th century is different. Alright, so liberty of 18th century or 19th century stood for all these things. Stood for freedom of individual, equality of all before law, government by consent, that is democracy. Okay, inviolability, not complete democracy, but a form of democracy. Inviolability of private property. At that time, private property was actually one of the rights of the people. It came as a result of French Revolution. Okay, but it did not necessarily stand for universal suffrage, which means even at this time, even with the education or even with the rise of middle class, still universal adult suffrage was not a topic. Okay, at this time, only those people who had land were allowed to vote. Okay, only those males, not people, those males, only those males who had land qualification, a particular amount of land, were allowed the voting rights. Which means those people who did not possess land were not allowed to vote. Also, all women were not allowed to vote. Okay, women did not have voting rights anywhere in Europe at this time. Women got voting rights only in the 20th century. Until then, they were kept away from the political process of the nation. Okay, so Napoleonic Code went back to limited suffrage and reduced women to the status of minor, subject to the authority of fathers and husbands. This is what I just told you. Okay, Napoleon, I told you, Napoleon, once he came to power, one of the bad things he did was actually to remove democracy. And on doing so, he made sure that women have no part in the political process of the nation. They were actually considered equal to a minor person and had to obey their husbands or fathers or whatever. Okay, so now around this time, during the time of Napoleon, I told you he annexed various European nations and all. During his reign, there was actually 200 principalities in Germany. Okay, when Napoleon came to power, Germany was, the current Germany, at that time there was no Germany. The current, whatever we call Germany, at that time had 200 different principalities. Okay, when Napoleon came to power and he started expanding and waging war against all these nations, he managed to unite these 200 different principalities into 39 states. Okay, so Napoleon was the person who initiated this unification of Germany. Clear? So the 200 principalities of the today's Germany, which actually became annexed into 39 states and because of Napoleonic invasions. Clear? Now, problem was that even though Napoleon managed to bring this much unity, still between these 39 states, there was a huge difference. Okay, in each state, the customs duty was different, taxes were different, language was different. Okay, so there was no unity among these 39 states at all. So what is the problem? Problem is the trade will become hampered. If a person has to conduct trade in these areas, then while moving from one principality to the other principality, he has to pay a tax. Then moving to the next one, he will have to pay a tax again. Clear? So the trade was hampered and the economy of all these nations all these 39 states began to go down. Okay, so each had its own currency, its own weights and measures. This all became an obstacle to the economic exchange and the growth of new commercial class. Clear? So at this time, the most powerful among these 39 states, okay, I told you there are 39 states. Among these 39 states, the most powerful one is known as Prussia. Okay, Prussia, not Russia, Prussia. So, Prussian king, he came up with a concept known as Zollverein. 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 So, what is Zollverein? I will tell you. Zollverein is actually an initiative of Prussia which abolished the tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from 32 to 2. Okay, so Zollverein is essentially a customs union. Customs union made by Prussia. Okay, Prussia made this customs union along with some of these 39 states. Eventually, all the 39 states joined to this union. Why? Because in a customs union, there is no difference in the trade and tariff mechanism, which means it was easy to conduct exchanges, and eventually the economy started flourishing. Upon seeing this, more and more of these 39 states came and joined this Zollverein, and eventually, at the end, all the 39 states was a part of Zollverein. Okay, all the 39 states joined Zollverein. So now Germany is economically united. Okay, still we do not have a German country as we have now, but all the states of Germany are economically united. Clear? Now we have to see how they became politically also united. Then that is the formation of the country of Germany. We will see that very soon. Okay, so as a part of Zollverein, network of railways were also laid down, which actually increase the prosperity of these countries. Wherever railways are introduced, that economy will start to develop at a very high rate. Okay, so you just imagine about the Indian economy or British economy, whatever in those times in the 19th century. Introduction of railways is a major boost to the economy of that nation. So as a part of Zollverein, this was also done, and there was railways passing through all these 39 states, which eventually led to the economic upliftment of Germany. Okay, now again we have to go back a bit and see another topic, a new conservatism after 1850. So what happened in 1815? 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo and was sent to exile at St. Helena. Okay, so what happened? In 1815, what happened now? A spirit of conservatism was shown all over Europe. Conservatism means going to the traditional methods. They did not want radical changes. They were against liberalism. Okay, this is known as conservatism. Wanted to stick with the establishment. Clear? So a spirit of conservatism became wide after the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte. Alright, so these conservatives was more, more pro-established traditional institutions of state and society like monarchy, church, social hierarchies, property, family, etc. According to them, these things should not be changed. They were against these kinds of changes. Okay, they wanted to stick with the establishment, the established way of society, the established way of government, the established way of church. Okay, it should not be changed. That is the idea of conservatives. Clear? But even these conservative people did not want to go back to what it was before Napoleon. Okay, although Napoleon made all these things and these conservatives was against all this, even after defeat of Napoleon, conservatives did not want to go back to what it was before Napoleon. Why? Because they thought that some kind of modernization can actually strengthen traditional institutions. Okay, some modernizations, some technological advancements can actually strengthen modern institutions. For example, Napoleon actually trained the military in a very scientific way. Okay, this is a modern step. Training the military in a scientific way with new artillery, new ammunitions, etc. etc. So this is a modernization thing. So the conservatives wanted to incorporate this modernization in the traditional monarchy. What will happen? If the king has a superior army, a very good well-trained army, that is strengthening the monarchy. Okay, so such kind of modernization can be used to strengthen conservative institutions. This is what they thought. Okay, so in 1815, after defeating Napoleon, the Vienna Congress happened. I explained this, so I am not going to repeat it. Okay, so the Vienna Congress happened. This was done to redraw the map of Europe, to undo everything that Napoleon did. Okay, and this was actually hosted by the Austrian Chancellor, whose name is Metternich. Very, very important person. Okay, Metternich. Don't forget his name. Metternich was actually the architect of Vienna Congress. He played it very well, and he actually made the map of Europe after Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, so as per the Treaty of Vienna of 1815, Bourbon dynasty was restored to power in France. Okay, before the French Revolution, I told you about the Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, and Louis XVI was actually a part of Bourbon dynasty. Okay, and this dynasty was overthrown and a democratic government was set up in France. Later Napoleon came to power and he took over. But as per the Treaty of Vienna or as per the Vienna Congress, the government was replaced and Bourbon dynasty was put back into the power. Clear? France also lost the territories it annexed under Napoleon. They undid everything that Napoleon did. If Napoleon annexed a place to France, Vienna Congress actually gave it back. So everything that Napoleon did was undone by the Vienna Congress. That was the aim also. Clear? So Kingdom of Netherlands, which was actually also having Belgium with it, is in the north. Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south. Piedmont is Italy, okay? Genoa, do not worry, it's a principality. Piedmont is the Italy of 19th century. Okay, we will see about that very soon, don't worry. Then Austria was given control of northern Italy. German Confederation of 39 states that had been set up by Napoleon was left untouched. This was the only exception. Okay, everything else was changed back to what it was. But the 200 principalities which was annexed to 39 states by Napoleon Bonaparte was left untouched. So now, even after the Vienna Congress, Germany is a assemblage of 39 different states. Clear? Now, the revolutionaries. Okay, now I hope you understood what the Vienna Congress did. Vienna Congress actually gave parts of various countries to various different countries. So if you just look at this again, look, Kingdom of Netherlands and Belgium was brought together. Genoa was added to Piedmont. Piedmont is Italy. A part of northern Italy was given to Austria. Okay, so what does this mean? This means the people of the same culture is split into various countries. Okay, so Italian speaking people are, a part of them are now in Piedmont, part of them are now with Austria, a part of them are now with Genoa. Okay, so ethnically same people are now in different nations. This is what Vienna Congress did, which was a blunder. Why? Because people always wanted to come together. Correct, na? I mean, if there is a commonality between various people, they always will want to come together. Even in India's case, just think about India. India, after getting independence, initially people, the politicians who ruled our country, people like Jawaharlal Nehru, etc., Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, etc., they did not want to form the states based on linguistic basis. Okay, they did not want to form states based on language. But what happened eventually? Most of the states in India are formed based on the language. The first state to be born based on linguistic basis is Andhra. Okay, Andhra was formed. Then later various new states came in. Kerala was formed because Malayalam is the common language. Tamil Nadu formed because Tamil is the common language. Clear? So such kind of ethnically similar people always want to come together. That is an inherent habit of ethnicity. Clear? So same thing happened in Europe also. In Europe also people wanted to come together. Clear? So they started voicing their protests against their rulers, and they started fighting for a united nation of their own. So these people who fought for or who made such kind of protests or revolts were known as the revolutionaries of Europe at that time. Okay, yeah, revolutionaries at that time. If you have any queries, you can put it in the YouTube live chat. I will get back to you after the end of a slide. Okay, so now let's see what are these revolutionaries. How did they manage to come together and do all these things and all? We have to study, or we have to see a couple of important revolutionaries also. So these revolutionaries were actually put underground by the monarchies. I mean, whenever these revolutionaries voiced their opinion, what did the monarchies do? They used power to suppress them. Okay, they sent their army and they suppressed the revolt. They oppressed them. Clear? So most of these revolutionaries, upon the fear of suppression, they were actually secret societies. Okay, they formed various secret societies and worked underground. Clear? Revolutionaries also saw the creation of nation states as a necessary part of struggle for freedom. Okay, I mean, the initial struggle was for freedom. I mean, if you are free, then you can set up your own government and then unite people. Now, so freedom is the first preference. After freedom, they want to unite everybody. Once they are united, it is known as a nation state, because all the people in that particular state has a common feeling of nationalism. So whenever there is a common nationalistic feeling, that state will become a nation. Okay, so that is a nation state. Clear? So revolutionaries wanted to set up such nation states. Clear? So one example of a revolutionary at that time was Giuseppe Mazzini. I hope many of you have heard this name, Mazzini. Giuseppe Mazzini was actually an Italian revolutionary. Okay, I mean, a brief history of his life is given. That is not much important. He was born in Genoa in 1807 and he became a member of Carbonari. What is Carbonari? Carbonari is one of the most famous Italian secret societies at that time. Okay, Italian revolutionary group, which was actually a secret society at that time. The most prominent among those is known as Carbonari. So Mazzini actually became a member of Carbonari. Later in his life, he founded two other organizations also. Two other revolutionary organizations also. One is known as the Young Italy. Very important organization. Why, I will tell you. Okay, Young Italy in Marseille and Young Europe in Bern. Young Italy is important because Young Italy actually eventually paves way for the unification of Italy. Okay, Young Italy movement attracted lots and lots of people to it. Then later on we see that Young Italy, or the people in the Young Italy, rise in protest against their monarchies and eventually lead to the unification of Italy. Okay, so this is a very important organization. Now, Mazzini believed that God had intended nations to be the natural units of mankind. Okay, I mean, Mazzini believed this thing. I mean, he believed that God intended nations to be the natural units of mankind. So, if you want to set up a nation, then you want the people to come together. So, the idea of nation state is born from Mazzini's belief that God intended nations to be natural units of mankind. So, unification alone could be the basis of Italian liberty. Clear? So, if nations has to be born, then it has to be unified first. The people of different of the same ethnicity who are right now in different parts of the Europe has to be united together. Clear? So, unification was the only way to achieve Italian liberty. Clear? For all these reasons, Metternich, the architect of the Vienna Congress, he described Mazzini as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Okay, Metternich was a clever person. He undid everything that Napoleon Bonaparte did. Okay, but Mazzini is actually trying to unite everything. Metternich actually divided it back to various countries. Now Mazzini is trying to unite some of it. So Metternich called him the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Clear? So this can be asked in a question in the world history portion, paper 1, GS paper 1. You can be given this statement, the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Okay, and a question from Italian revolution Italian unification can come from that based on a quote. UPSC also asks questions like that. Okay, so be careful. Now, so as we saw an example in Italy, which is the Carbonari, Young Italy movement, Mazzini, etc., etc. Similarly, in other parts of Europe also, same things happened. Okay, so we are going to see the age of revolutions between 1830 to 1848. Okay, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte is defeated. From 1815 to 1830, everything was done based on the Congress of Vienna. And from 1830 to 1848, we see that in most parts of Europe, protests and revolts will start happening against the monarchies. Okay, so liberalism and nationalism came to be increasingly associated with revolution. Most of these revolutionaries, their target, their goal was actually liberalism and nationalism. Clear? Freedom is obviously there. After getting freedom, they wanted to be liberal and they wanted also to become a nation. Clear? So these revolutions were actually led by middle class people. Most of these revolutions, it was not done by led by a noble or a king or anything. It was actually done by middle class people, the educated middle class people. Clear? So in July 1830, again these kinds of movements started in France only. Alright. So July 1830, the Bourbon kings were overthrown by the liberal revolutionaries. Clear? Remember, all these things started in the French Revolution, even before Napoleon. Right now, the second wave of all these revolts also start in France. In July 1830, the Bourbon king, which was imposed on France after the Congress of Vienna, was actually overthrown by the people, overthrown by these liberal revolutionaries, and they installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe as its head. Okay, so France is now a constitutional monarchy. It is partly constitutional monarchy means what? What is the difference between a monarchy and a constitutional monarchy? In a monarchy, the king has full power. Okay, but in constitutional monarchy, the king is limited by the constitution. Clear? There will be a written constitution or some kind of constitution, and the king's power is limited with this constitution. That is a constitutional monarchy. Right now, Britain is a constitutional monarchy. In Britain, the queen is the supreme head even now. But the real power lies with the parliament or the British constitution. Okay, so that is a constitutional monarchy. So a constitutional monarchy was imposed in France by these revolutionaries. Alright, so here is another quote from Metternich. When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. Another probable question for your UPSC mains. Okay, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. What does this mean? This means France is a spreader of infectious disease, and the infectious disease being liberty, equality, fraternity, and all these kinds of modern ideologies. Okay, so whenever one of these gets in France, entire Europe will start rising with these same concerns. That is what it meant by when France sneezes, the entire Europe catches cold. Okay, so this July Revolution of 1830, it sparked an uprising in Brussels, which led to Belgium breaking away from the United Kingdom of Netherlands. Okay, I told you earlier, as per the Congress of Vienna, Belgium was given to Netherlands. Okay, so now from France, these kinds of ideologies got spread to other nations also. So here we can see an example where Belgium broke away from Netherlands after an uprising in Brussels. Similarly, in 1832, as per the Treaty of Constantinople, Greece became an independent nation. Okay, Greece was actually part of Ottoman Empire at that time, but again they are also getting inspired from the French happenings of 1830. There also rebellions happened, and eventually Greece managed to get independence from Ottoman Empire based on the Treaty of Constantinople. Okay, so various parts of Europe started getting various revolts, and it started getting results. More and more monarchies are now replaced by some other kinds of government. Constitutional monarchies are there, part democracies are there, etc. etc. Okay, this is also the time when another kind of intellectual movement emerges. This form of movement is known as Romanticism. Okay, so we are going to see what this Romanticism is and how it affected these nationalistic feelings across Europe. Clear? So as a part of development of nationalism, this is based on a common culture. I already told you this. So the art, the poetry, stories, music, all these things were written by various authors at this time, which actually promoted this feeling of nationalism. Okay, I mean, for example, consider India. Okay, in India's case, during the British freedom struggle and all, people, like, we have many songs, na? I mean, Sare Jahan Se Acha, that is one. Then even Janagana Mana is a song that is initially written by Tagore. Okay, so these kinds of songs actually inspires people. It will cultivate this feeling of nationalism among the people. Okay, so such a kind of happening or phenomena also happened in Europe. The artists, the poets, the story writers, etc. started making their works focusing on inspiring nationalism. Okay, so this is the time when Romanticism also flourished in Europe. So what is Romanticism now? Romanticism is an ideology which criticized the glorification of reason and science and focused instead on emotions, intuition, and mystical feelings. Okay, so I told you Enlightenment happened in Europe way back. Okay, which eventually led to industrial revolution, etc., etc. So the thing was, the people were starting to think with their brains. Okay, I mean, they were going behind reasons. Clear? They started questioning everything. So this is one way to go about it. But Romanticists were actually against this. Instead of appealing to the brain, these people wanted to appeal to the heart. Okay, so which means what? Rather than using reasons, they were pleading to the emotions of people, to their feelings. Clear? So that is why rather than glorifying reason or science, they were focusing on emotions, intuition, mystical feelings, etc., etc. So when you plead to the feelings of people, there is a collective heritage. Correct, right? I mean, when you appeal to the emotion, then there is something common for all these people. There is a cultural tradition for that people. You are appealing to that heritage. And this heritage is the basis of a nation. Okay, so this collective feeling is actually the basis of a nation. This is what Romanticists told. Clear? So for one example, we have German philosopher John Gottfried Herder. Okay, hello Solo, welcome. German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, who lived between 1744 and 1803. He claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among common people, or the Das Volk. Okay, rather than going to the monarchies or the noble class people, if you really want to find true German culture, then you have to go to the people. the common man of Germany. The common people of Germany is known as Das Volk. Okay, it's a German term. All it means is common people. That's all. Okay. So what is so particular about common man? Earlier I told you the French monarchs or the powerful nobility, they used French language for their diplomatic and their official works. French was the topmost, the high class language at that time. Okay, just like Sanskrit was for India. Okay, but the common people used common dialects, local languages. Okay, in India also we had many local languages here and there. For example, during the ancient times it was Prakrit. Prakrit was the common language for people. Okay, so similarly here also German in Europe, the Romanticists started emphasizing on vernacular language and the collection of local folklore. Okay, so I told you these Romanticists were focusing on collective heritage. So this best thing to do right now is to collect all the traditional folklores. Traditional folklores means what? Those stories that our grandmothers tell us. Okay, I mean it is a part of a tradition. That stories are passed from generations to generations to generations to their child like that. Okay, I mean it may not make any sense or logic, but even then these are all part of our traditional heritage, and it is easy to appeal to emotions with the help of these kinds of folk tales, traditional folk tales. Okay, also these were all written in vernacular language, which means the language spoken by the people, not the high funda language or the high class language, the language of common man. Okay, so all these actually inspired or paced up the nationalistic feeling among people. Another example, we have Karol Karpunski. Okay, Karol Kurpinski. He actually celebrated the nationalistic struggle through his operas and music, turning folk dances like Polonaise and Mazurka into nationalistic symbols. These are examples. You can just study these names, Mazurka, Polonaise, etc. and you can use it in your exam paper. Okay, so here is another example for that. Similarly, in 1831, in Poland, there was an armed rebellion against Russian rule. Okay, I mean Poland was actually, a part of Poland was actually at the hands of Russia at this time. Okay, so here in Poland also the same thing happened. They wanted to, the Polish people wanted to unite. They wanted to get rid of the Russian speaking people. Okay, so in 1831, a rebellion happened in Poland. This rebellion was actually crushed. It didn't succeed. But even then, it started and it propagated for a quite amount of time. Okay, and here also language was used as a weapon of national resistance. Okay, language was also made the weapon of national resistance. Again, we can see in various parts of Europe, everybody want to unite based on language. Okay, Germans want to unite because German is the common language. Italians want to do the same because Italian is the common language. Here the Polish people want to unite because Polish is the common language. Okay, so based on language, everybody wanted to unite. Now we are going to see how this happened. I mean, how the unification actually happened, actually materialized. Before that, let's see, the basis of these revolts. Okay, so hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. So in 1830, going back to 1830 again, I told you, if you remember in this slide, I have told you that everything started from 1830 to 1848. See, the age of revolutions is 1830 to 1848. So in 1830, the entire Europe was in economic hardships. Various kinds of hardships. The main cause for this is industrialization. Okay, in the first half of 19th century, industrialization happened. When industrialization happened, what happened? The peasants changed to workers, factory workers. So in search of job, people from rural areas migrated to urban areas. So what happened? The population in urban areas started to rise very fast, very rapidly. Also, new medicines were discovered. The healthcare was improved. All this means what? The birth rate has increased. Death rate has gone low. So overall, in Europe, the population started rising very, very rapidly. But no preparation was done in order to accommodate all these people. Okay, so what happened now? There are no jobs for these people. Unemployment started to rise up because already jobs are less. and the population is rising. Now industrialization also happened, which means machines are doing the job of people. So existing people also lost their job. So unemployment rate was skyrocketing. And along with that, migration is also happening. From rural areas, people are coming to cities in search of job. Okay, so these cities became overcrowded and eventually became slums. So in slums, the life is very unhygienic. Proper sanitation facility is not there. It is a miserable life. Clear? Now, also while all this was going on, there was also stiff competition from imports of cheap machine-made goods from England, especially in textile production. Okay, people are already at miserable condition. Now, in their countries, imports are brought in very cheaply from Britain. Britain has industrialized. I told you, Britain is the first country to become industrialized. So from there, cheap goods are being exported into these countries. So the domestic players, the domestic artisans, they started losing whatever left is there for them. Clear? So in those regions of Europe where the aristocracy still enjoyed power, peasants struggled under the burden of feudal dues and obligations. So in those areas where industrialization has not yet happened and landlordism was still prevailing, there what happened? Condition was not different. In cities, industrialization is causing all these problems. In rural areas, it is the landlords who are causing all these problems. That is it. Okay, so anyhow, the life of common man in Europe was miserable. Clear? There was a rise in food prices, and if there is a bad harvest in that year, everybody will go pauper. Pauper means what? Valuation is equal to 0. Has no money. Okay, that is pauper. So everybody people started to become pauper. And in 1848, food shortages and widespread unemployment became extremely severe. It started in 1830s, but eventually by the time of 1848, things were extremely miserable. Clear? So what happened now? The imposed king, I told you that Louis Philippe was imposed in as the ruler at that time. He was thrown away because he was an incompetent ruler. Otherwise, these kind of things won't happen now. If people are miserable, then they always criticize their government. That is quite obvious. So here, Louis Philippe was considered as a not competent person, and he was thrown away. National Assembly was formed, which proclaimed a republic and granted suffrage to all adult males above 21 and guaranteed the right to work. So people set up a kind of government on their own. This is known as National Assembly. And this National Assembly proclaimed that nation or that part of the country as a republic. Okay. Also granted suffrage to all adult males above 21 years. Remember, even in these kinds of democratic setups, it is still males. Women are still considered as second grade citizens, subordinate to males. Okay. Only in the 20th century, women get the right to vote. Until then, they are second category citizens everywhere. Okay. Even in Europe. Clear? So, this National Assembly also guaranteed the right to work. This is something that everybody was looking forward to. Everybody will get an opportunity to work. Okay, a job, which means a kind of income security. Clear? So, in 1848, we see that due to all these miseries, the revolution of the liberals went into the next level. Okay, I told you, in this previous slide, I told you in 1848, food shortages were there, widespread unemployment were there, Louis Philippe was forced to flee, and a National Assembly was set up. So how did this happen? It was set up as a part of a revolution. Okay, only when the people won this revolution, National Assembly was set up. So we are going to see how it progressed. Okay, so in 1848, a revolution led by educated middle class people happened. In other parts of Europe also it was reverberating. Men and women of liberal middle class combined their demands for constitutionalism with national unification. Clear? So here is an interesting paradox. In all these revolts, even in the first French revolt, women played a huge role in getting that success, in achieving what they got. Okay, but once a democratic form of government was set up, they always did not concern about women's rights. Okay, although women played a major role in all these revolts, They were considered as second-grade citizens by all those, the so-called democratic governments that were set up. So, in France, everybody came together at a city known as Frankfurt. Okay, and in this city, an all-German National Assembly was set up in this date, 18th May 1848, and 831 elected representatives came to this city of Frankfurt. Clear? And convened in the church of Saint Paul. Okay, Saint Paul Church in the city of Frankfurt. This all-German National Assembly was formed in the year 1848. 831 elected representatives came together to draft a constitution for Germany. Okay, so these people, they overthrew Louis Philippe and they formed this National Assembly, and in this area, in this place known as Frankfurt, they made the German constitution. But even now there is no Germany. Okay, don't forget, Germany is still an economic union. We do not have a politically full-fledged Germany yet. Clear? But anyway, we have a constitution now. Now, what these revolutionaries did now, they wanted to do a constitutional monarchy. Okay, their idea of government was constitutional monarchy. So now they have a constitution drafted and ready. Now they wanted a monarch. They wanted a king to be ruling the entire German region. What was the problem now? The problem was Prussia was the most powerful among all these German principalities. I already told you that. Okay, Prussia was the most powerful among the 39 states of Germany. The ruler of Prussia name is Frederick William IV. Okay, he was the king of Prussia. So these revolutionaries thought, since Prussia is the most powerful among all these states, let's put the ruler of Prussia as the ruler of Germany. Okay, so let's put ruler of Prussia as the emperor of Germany. This was what the revolutionaries thought. But Frederick William IV rejected this. Okay, because why? These revolutionaries has replaced monarchy with constitutional monarchy, which is actually affecting the monarchical power of all the kings. Okay, so Frederick William IV said no. I am with the side of monarchies. I am against you. So I am not accepting this offer. So what happened? Nothing happened. The plan of revolutionaries failed. If there is no ruler at the top, then the government is not set up. It is like having a country without a prime minister. Alright. So all this, the entire progression of that revolt, in the end, failed. They won the revolution, but they failed to achieve the government. Clear? Also, their social basis started eroding. Why now? Because parliament was dominated by the middle class. These middle class people did not like the lower class people. I told you, middle class actually emerged from the lower class as a part of industrial revolution. They made money and they became middle class. But once they became middle class, they did not like the lower class people. They did not want to associate with the lower class people. They are rich people now. Okay, they did not want to associate themselves with the poor. So the majority of the country is actually the peasants, the poor people. So once these middle class people started not caring for these poor peasants, their social base faded. Okay, so eventually this revolution or the result of this revolution was basically nothing. Clear? Although they won the revolution, they achieved nothing. That is what happened. There is no government. The parliament formed, lost its social basis, and they eventually lost their support and eventually disbanded. Clear? So when Frankfurt Parliament convened in the Church of St. Paul, women were admitted only as observers to stand in the visitors' gallery. Okay, I told you women played a huge part in all these revolutions, but they still were considered as second-grade citizens. They were not given voting rights. All these 831 representatives were men. Okay, not women. Now, in the year 1848, autocratic monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce changes that had already been taken place in Western Europe before 1815. In the period I am talking to you about, the first half of 19th century, Western Europe was comparatively much advanced compared to Eastern Europe. Western Europe means what? Britain, France, Spain, etc., etc. These are the Western nations of Europe. These were much more advanced than the Eastern nations. Okay, but after 1848, the Eastern Europe also started imbibing or inspiring from whatever happened in the Western Europe. For example, they abolished serfdom and bonded labor. Clear? Also abolished it in Habsburg dominions and in Russia. Russia is also considered as a European country. Okay, although in the map we think it is an Asian country, Russia is actually a European country. So, in the Eastern European nations such as Russia, Poland, Hungary, etc., etc., serfdom and bonded labor was abolished. Now, this is the scenario when we are going to see how Germany and Italy was unified. Okay. So, after 1848, nationalism in Europe moved away from its association with democracy and revolution. Okay, the concept of nationalism actually witnessed a radical change now. They did not want democracy. They did not want universal adult suffrage. Okay, also they were actually moving away themselves from revolution because revolution failed. I mean, although the 1848 revolution was a success, in the result it failed. It failed to set up a government of its own. Why? Because the king of Prussia did not want to become a president. He was against it. Now, the nationalistic sentiments were often mobilized by conservatives for promoting state power and achieving political domination over Europe. Okay, so rather than a democratic government or rather than a revolutionary form of government, all these nationalistic sentiments or the feeling of nationalism was used by these conservatives to promote state power and achieving political domination over Europe. So this is what eventually leads to the unification of Germany and Italy. Okay, so in Germany and Italy also, people uses this nationalistic feelings to become united. Clear? For promoting the power of state rather than introducing democracy or anything, they were more into forming a state, forming a nation state. So in Germany, I mean at that time there is no Germany, the most powerful among the 39 states was Prussia. So in Prussia, the ruler, one of the prominent persons in Prussia was actually Otto von Bismarck. Okay, the ruler was Kaiser, but Otto von Bismarck became the chancellor. In Germany, that is the biggest power. Okay, in India, it is the prime minister. But even now, in Germany, the topmost authority is known as chancellor. Current German chancellor is Angela Merkel. I hope you know all that. Okay, so this time, it was Otto von Bismarck. I hope you know this person as well. Bismarck is known as the Iron Man of the world. Okay, so Bismarck, in this time, fought 3 wars over 7 years with Austria, with Denmark and with France. All these wars ended in the victory of Prussia. Okay, and eventually at the end of these revolutionary wars, Germany became united. Clear? I mean, we have to see, I have already detailedly taken what this war is all about and how did the war progress, etc., etc. in the world history series. You can go back and watch that. In this textbook, it is not given in details. Also, if I start explaining that, the class will go on for a very long time. I did not want that to happen. So, I am not going to all that. Clear? So, anyway, at the end of these 3 wars, Germany became a united kingdom. Alright? Again, in January 1871, the Prussian king William I, the king changed in Prussia. Okay? I mean, earlier it was Frederick William IV who denied to become the emperor of Germany. But now it is William I. And this person was a very nationalistic person and he actually cared about all these things. He actually accepted the throne of Germany. After the unification of Germany is completed by Otto von Bismarck, he put William I as the emperor of Germany. And this ceremony happened in Versailles Palace. Palace of Versailles, there is a hall known as the Hall of Mirrors. It's a beautiful hall. You can go back and Google it, okay, if you want to see it. And in the Hall of Mirrors, William I was proclaimed as the ruler of Germany. Clear? Now, Prussian measures and practices often became the model for rest of Germany. So, since Prussia was the most powerful kingdom and William I is also the king of Prussia. Whatever was the prevalent practice in Prussia became the common practice in Germany. Clear? So in 1871 January, we have Germany as we see it today. This is the first time the 39 states of Germany has been united as a single state by one man, Otto von Bismarck. Okay, you have to study the details for UPSC. You can study that from my world history lectures. You can see the picture here. The Prussian Empire is actually one among these. The entire Prussia is shown in the violet region. Okay, then you can see Silesia, you can see East Prussia, West Prussia, etc. Then the Westphalia is shown here, Rhineland is here. Okay, so all the Holstein and Schleswig are shown here, Bavaria is shown here. Okay, so eventually Bismarck actually managed to bring together or annex all these things as one state. Schleswig was actually with the Denmark Empire at that time. This Otto von Bismarck used his skillful policies to bring Schleswig within Germany. Okay, I mean, you have to study Bismarck in detail for UPS. Okay, I mean, he was a genius. He made lots and lots of alliances, military pacts, etc., etc., to bring Germany together as it is. Okay, and you will also study that it is this policy of Otto von Bismarck which eventually led to World War I. Okay, there was lots and lots of military alliances made by Bismarck. For example, the Triple Alliance. Triple Alliance was one of the major powers in World War I. This was actually created by Bismarck. Okay, then there is a dual alliance between Germany and Austria, again by Bismarck. Okay, then there is the Kaiserbund League created between Russia, Austria-Hungary and Germany, again by Bismarck. All these policies eventually give rise to World War I. Okay, we have to see that in a different lesson altogether. So moving on, Germany is unified. Now we have to see how Italy is unified. Okay, let me just check your comments before that. Ajilan, I am teaching history only. Okay, geography, let me see. For now, I am in Unacademy. I am doing history and current affairs. Okay, these are my classes that I handle. I will see if I can handle geography. If it is possible, I will take it after the entire NCERT history is over. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Germany is unified. Now we have to see how Italy is unified. Okay, Italy was also different countries. Let me just show you a map here. So this is the Italy at before unification. Okay, before unification, Italy is something like this. Different principalities. You can see there are two Sicilies. There is Savoy and Sardinia, Lombardy, Venetia, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, Papal State. Okay, so different principalities. But after unification, it all becomes one state. You can see the entire violet state together. It all becomes one. That is our modern day Italy. So how did this happen? Again, very important topic. I have already taken this in the World History series. Let's see. Can you see this one? Savoy and Sardinia. I hope you can see this place. Okay, this is the real Italy at this time. Okay, in 1848, the actual Italy is Savoy and Sardinia. This is also known as Piedmont, Sardinia Piedmont. Earlier I mentioned this name. Okay, so this is the current Italy, ruled by an Italian king. What we are going to see is people like Mazzini, etc., making all other parts of Germany annex with the Sardinia Piedmont region and eventually forming the Italian Empire. Okay, so Italians were scattered over several dynastic states and the Habsburg Empire. For this one, Venetia, Lombardy and Venetia was actually with the Habsburg Empire, that is Austria. Okay, so when Bismarck made Germany united, he actually in the war annexed Venetia also. Okay, when Bismarck was conducting a war against Austria, there was a German-Austria war that happened. During this war, Italy, Bismarck said to Italy that if you help us in this war, if we win it, we will give you Venetia. Okay, so based on that, Italy helped Bismarck against Austria, and when they won the war, Italy got Venetia, and that is the final annexation, and Italy became a huge nation. Okay, so initially it is split into different dynasties in different empires. It was divided into 7 states, of which only one, that is Sardinia Piedmont, was ruled by Italian princely house. Sardinia Piedmont. Okay, now the north is surrounded by Austrian Habsburg Empire. Center you can see Pope, that is the papal states. Can you see this? This region, this is ruled by Pope. So all these regions are known as the papal states. Alright, the northern states, that is the Lombardy and Venetia, were actually under the control of the Habsburg Empire, the Austria. Clear? And these southern states, not southern states, the central states, Parma, Modena and Tuscany. Okay, there are 3 states here, you can see, I hope, green. Okay, Parma, Modena and Tuscany. These 3 are actually under the control of Austrian princes. Okay, various princes of Austria. So basically, Italy is, the real Italy is only Sardinia, a one mere principality. Okay, so in 1830, Mazzini make his appearance through the Carbonari. Okay, then he found the Young Italy movement. Then King Victor, Giuseppe Mazzini actually helps King Victor Emmanuel II to annex various principalities. King Victor Emmanuel II is the person who is ruling Sardinia Piedmont at the moment, the real Italian king. Clear? So using Mazzini and the Young Italy movement, along with the power of the king, they together annex various portion to the real Italy, Sardinia Piedmont. So there is another person, just like Mazzini, he is known as Cavour. Okay, Cavour, Cavour. Cavour was not a revolutionary or a democrat or anything. Alright, he was an ordinary person but a very good military person. Clear? So, with him or under him, Sardinia Piedmont succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. There was a war between Austria and Hungary, the Habsburg Empire, that is Austria and Hungary, against Italy. Okay, at the end of this war, because of able military leaders like Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont won. Okay, they won this war, and when they won this war, actually they won this war with the help of France. Okay, some help was given by France also. So at the end of war, they managed to annex Lombardy, this portion. Okay, once they managed to annex Lombardy, the French king pulled out of the war. Okay, if French king was still there in the war, probably they could have annexed Venetia also, which is also still under the control of Austria. But after annexing Lombardy, the French king pulled out of the war. So Italians cannot alone defeat Austria. Austria is at that time very mighty power. Okay, so Italians cannot alone attack Austria. So they stopped the war there. But anyway, Sardinia Piedmont, to Sardinia Piedmont, Lombardy is also annexed. Clear? Now, a large number of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi, okay, together formed the Red Shirts. Okay, Garibaldi is another leader. We have to study him in detail, but for now, understand his name and move on. So, just like Mazzini, just like Cavour, another prominent Italian leader at that time is Garibaldi, Giuseppe Garibaldi. Under Giuseppe Garibaldi, a large group of armed volunteers came together and they successfully managed to annex the 2 Sicilies in 1860. Okay, so you can see the 2 Sicilies here, the kingdom of 2 Sicilies, this violet one. Okay, so this was annexed to the kingdom in 1860. Clear? So what is remaining? What is remaining is Venetia. I told you about Venetia. Eventually Bismarck helps annexing Venetia. Papal states is still there. Then the central states, Parma, Modena and Tuscany. Okay, so in as the revolutions go on, eventually the people of Germany manages to overthrow the central states princes also. I told you Austrian princes are ruling the central states, Parma, Modena and Tuscany. So people here actually manages to overpower them also, and eventually all these will come under Italy except papal states. Okay, except for these papal states that is under the control of the Pope, the rest of Italy comes together. Clear? But the problem is what now? Papal states cannot be touched. Why? because it is under the protection of France. France is a predominantly Catholic country. Okay, and Pope is the highest religious leader of Catholics. So France has put a French army to protect the Pope. So as long as that French army is there, Italy cannot annex the Papal States. I mean, they are not strong enough to defeat France. Okay, but during the Austro-Prussian War, there was a war between France and Prussia later. Okay, and when this war was going on, France actually pulled out these soldiers from the Papal States and brought them to the war front against Prussia. Okay, so the moment the French did this, Italian military went into Rome or went into the Papal State and annexed it. Papal State is also predominantly Rome. Okay, it is Rome. So the Italian military stormed into Rome and annexed it. Clear? So that is the final. Rome was the final state to be annexed to Italy, and once that also was done, this Italy changed to this figure. Okay, together as one sole Italy. Clear? And in 1861, after the complete annexation, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed as the King of Unified Italy. Clear? So these are very important. This is a very important chapter. You have to study this in detail. Use your Arjun Dev textbook or the Norman Lowe textbook to gain more details. Again, Mazzini, very important figure, who is the founder of Young Italy, who is also influenced the King of Sardinia, Victor Emmanuel II, in order to annex all these regions. So Mazzini is an important figure. Cavour is a diplomat, able politician also. So that is also a very important personality, Cavour. And Garibaldi, our military person, okay, who organized the so-called Red Shirts. Okay, this army is also known as the Red Shirts. Okay, armed volunteers is known as Red Shirts. So these three personalities are very, very important: Mazzini, Cavour, and Garibaldi. Okay. Anyway, we have almost reached the end of this session. Just last couple of slides. The strange case of Britain. So we saw that in Europe, various nations, various nations managed to unite together at different points of time. Okay, Germany came together under Bismarck. Italy was united by these three personalities. Okay, then Austria-Hungary again became a different nations at different times. But Britain is a very curious case. Okay, because such a revolt never happened in Britain. It happened everywhere in Europe. It started with France in the French Revolution, but it never happened in Britain. Okay, so Britain as we see today is not a result of sudden upheaval or revolution. There was no British nation prior to the 18th century. Okay, the nation of Britain was actually a result of 18th century, but that nation came up not as a result of any revolutions. It grew into a nation eventually. It was a very slow, gradual process. Okay, so English nation steadily grew in wealth. Wealth means they acquired colonies and more, they became industrialized. Okay, so more raw materials, more finished goods. So because of all these things, English nation, that is Britain, became more and more wealthy. Okay, English Parliament seized the power from monarchy in the year 1688. This is way before industrialization. I am talking about the monarchy seizing the parliament seizing the power from monarchy happened in 17th century. 1688 is the year the English king was overthrown and the British Parliament got the power. So since 1688, England is actually a constitutional monarchy. Okay, so there was a act in 1707 known as the Act of Union, and based on this act, England and Scotland came together and formed the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Okay, until then it was just Britain, but as per the Act of Union in 1707, England and Scotland together came as one and formed the United Kingdom. Right now we use this term, UK. So UK was formed as a result of this act in 1707. But what was the problem now? British was the superior power and Scotland was comparatively weak. So what happened? The Scotland's distinctive culture, political institutions, etc. were systematically suppressed. Okay, I mean, obviously, in such a, when two parties unite together, the stronger one will always prevail. Correct, na? So here also Britain managed to impose their own traditions and their own methods of government into Scotland as well. Okay, for example, Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak in their Gaelic language. They were forbidden to wear their national dress. Clear? Then later, Ireland also suffered the same fate. Ireland was also united with Britain. Eventually, Ireland gets out. That is a different story. But Ireland also suffered the same fate under Britain. Okay. British society was actually always divided between Catholics and Protestants. Not Protestants, Protestants. Okay, this one you can study if you study the Renaissance period. Renaissance, Reformation and Enlightenment. There the history of the Catholics and Protestants are given beautifully. You can read that. But right now it is beyond the scope of this particular textbook. So I am not going to tell about it. Anyway, the society in Britain was generally divided into Catholics and Protestants. So Catholic revolts against British dominance were also suppressed. Predominantly the population is Protestants. Catholics are there, but Protestants are more in number. So that is why this is also one of the reasons why France and Britain are enemies always. Okay, they are natural enemies or arch rivals because of this reason. France is predominantly Catholic, but in Britain, Catholics were overthrown and the Protestants came to the power. It's religious in nature. Clear? So anyway, this is the society of Britain. In Britain, there was a revolt which was led by Wolfe Tone, a person known as Wolfe Tone, and his United Irishmen. Clear? So I told you the Britain was a gradual evolution and no immediate result was gained by any revolution. That does not mean there was no revolt in Britain. There was a revolt which was led by Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen. But Ireland was forcibly incorporated into United Kingdom in 1801. Clear? This revolution failed. This revolution was to prevent the annexation of Ireland to Britain, to the GBR. But it failed. So Britain united Ireland with the UK anyway. Okay, that is why I told you in Britain all kinds of revolutions were there, but none of them succeeded. That is the reason. That is also the reason why UK is not a result of whatever we see in other countries. In other countries, after the French Revolution, the French government significantly changes. In Germany, Bismarck's policies significantly changes Germany. Mazzini, Cavour, etc. changes Italy. But nothing like that is seen in Britain. Whoever protested against Britain was suppressed. No revolt was succeeded or achieved success in Britain. Okay, this is one example. Wolfe Tone's revolt against the British to prevent the acquisition of Ireland failed. And Ireland became a part of Britain. The symbols of New Britain, the British flag, also called the Union Jack, national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, English language, all these were actively promoted. And the older nations survived only as subordinate parties of British Union. Clear? I mean, whenever they conquered a place, they actually imposed their symbols of power into these nations as well. So Ireland and Scotland were subjected to this. They were also supposed to pay respect to the British flag, that is the Union Jack. They were also supposed to sing the British national anthem, use the language of Britain, that is English. Okay, so this is the case of Britain, which is a stand apart from everything else that is happening in Europe. That is the curious case of Britain. Now, visualizing nation. We have almost reached the end of this session. Okay, so visualizing nation. So this is also the time when we see that nations are visualized as a person. Okay, they are actually portrayed as female figures. You see this figure here. This is actually a woman. There is a woman in a very weird cloth with a sword on her hand, and there is a German flag. Can you see this German flag? Black, orange and yellow. So this is actually Germania. Okay, so this woman is actually representing Germany. This is how people and artists visualized nations around this time. They were always personified. Okay, very recently there was a beautiful judgment by some Allahabad High Court where it gave the status, legal status to Ganga and Yamuna. Correct, na? These two rivers are considered as human beings now. Similarly, in those times, these nations were also personified by the German people, or the people of their respective nations. Clear? So for example, French Revolution artists used the female allegory to portray idea of liberty, justice and the republic. Similarly, attributes of liberty were the red cap or the broken chain, while the justice is generally blindfolded woman carrying a pair of weighing scales. You know that right now? Whenever we see an Indian court scene in movies, you can see that blindfolded woman with a weighing machine, weighing scale in her hand. So again, that is a woman. So idea of justice is also personified as a woman. Clear? In France, she was christened as Marianne. Liberty and the Republic, the red cap, tricolor, cockade, etc., etc. So all these symbols were used for representing various ideologies and various political thoughts at that time. Okay, so the nations were personified. These ideologies were given symbols. Clear? So this is how people visualized a nation at that time. The idea of nationalism, the ideologies that formed the nationalism. Clear? So Germania became the allegory of the German nation, that is shown here. In visual representations, Germania wears a crown of oak leaves. You can see that here, as the German oak stands for heroism. Okay, again, these kinds of symbols started becoming more and more prominent. So in Germany, the oak symbolizes heroism. So the Germania wearing an oak crown, which means it symbolizes the heroism of Germany. So this is how people from all walks of life actually personified and visualized the nation at that time. Okay, so now we are going to see the last slide for the day, nationalism and imperialism. I told you about how nationalism grew in various countries at this time, various parts of Europe, various parts of the world, which eventually influenced the Indian national movement also. But at the same time, another something also grew side by side. This is known as imperialism. Okay, so there was always a conflict between nationalism and imperialism. For example, Britain was an imperialistic country which was imposing a colony in India, and India rose against Britain using the feeling of nationalism. So there is always a conflict between nationalism and imperialism. So in the last quarter of 19th century, nationalism became a narrow creed with limited ends. Okay, so in 1871, there is a very famous war known as the Balkan War, also known as the Balkan Crisis. Okay, where the Balkan states participated, and here we see how nationalism is downplayed. Okay, so countries like Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, etc. are together known as Balkan states. Okay, so in these Balkan states, the inhabitants are broadly Slavs. Okay, Slav is a language, and the people who speak these languages are known as Slavs. Okay, and these Balkan states was actually under the control of Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire with capital at Constantinople. So Ottoman Empire was in control of this region known as the Balkan region. Okay, so this is the time when romantic nationalisms happen all across Europe. I told you about this in a previous slide, how people appealing to the emotions, getting the common traditions, collective heredity, etc., etc. So romantic nationalism caused the disintegration of Ottoman Empire. Balkan people based their claims for independence or political rights on nationality and used history to prove that they had once been independent but subsequently subjugated by foreign powers. So these people also got inspired by these revolutions, by these ideals, and wanted to achieve independence. So they rose in revolt against the Ottoman Empire and eventually succeeded in achieving independence. Clear? So what happened now? There was always rivalry between European powers. Everybody wanted to expand their territory. France wanted to do it, Britain wanted to do it, Russia, Poland, everyone wants to expand their territory. So rivalry among European powers over trade and colonies, as well as naval and military might, happened always across Europe. They were actually keen on countering the hold of other powers over Balkans. So now Balkans are in independent states, but they are very small and very weak states. So here is a very good opportunity for anybody to attack these states and annex these states. Clear? So the major powers in Europe did not want anyone else to claim these states. They wanted to annex them before anybody put their foot or started thinking about it. So there was a crisis in Europe where almost all the major powers in Europe participated because everybody wanted to annex the Balkan states. Everyone wanted a share of these Balkan states. This is known as Balkan crisis. Okay, I mean, we have to study that as a separate chapter. I am not explaining it here. Anyway, a series of wars happened in this region, and these wars eventually ended in the First World War. Okay, so Balkan crisis was one of the causes of First World War. This the collapse of Ottoman Empire, the Balkan states becoming free, and the other European nations looking for potential colonies in Balkan states led to a war in Europe, which eventually became to be known as World War I. Okay, that is a different chapter. We will study it. Anyway, nationalism aligned with imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1940. Nationalism means the feeling for one's own nation. Imperialism means trying to impose colonies or trying to rule some other nation. So this expansionist policy is actually part of imperialism. So together, nationalism and imperialism brought European countries to war. Okay, for example, Germany trying to unite is nationalism, but after becoming united, trying to acquire other colonies, trying to impose their rule in other countries and annex various other countries, it is imperialism. So the ideas of nationalism and imperialism together led to the disaster of 1914, that is World War I. Clear? So anti-imperialist movements were predominantly nationalist. For example, in India we had an anti-imperial movement against Britain. So Indian national movement was predominantly nationalistic in nature. Similarly, European ideas of nationalism were nowhere replicated. This is a very important point. This is actually the last line of your textbook, but this is actually a very important point. European ideas of nationalism were nowhere replicated, for people everywhere developed their own specific variety of nationalism. Okay, European model nationalism, just look at India, look at Japan, look at any other country, China, Russia. In all these nations, some kind of nationalistic wars or revolutions occurred, but none of them had anything in common, or none of them was exactly similar to what happened in Europe. Indian national movement had its own methods, its own, Mahatma Gandhi coming in, we have this non-violence, truth, etc., etc. as our ideals. We did not march with the red shirts army against Britain. I mean, Subhash Chandra Bose tried to do an army thing, but predominantly Indian national movement was on the non-violent side. Similarly, we see the Russian national movement was entirely different. There, Lenin, along with the Bolsheviks, tried to acquire power in a different method and spreading the communism, etc., etc. China also different story. So in various parts of the world, these kinds of movements has happened, but none of these movements have actually is actually exactly similar with whatever happened in Europe. Okay, it is actually different. Europe is something specific. So you have, I cannot explain this point much more here, because in order to explain this point, you need to study other national movements also. So once we complete this textbook, you might have a better understanding of what this last statement means. This is a very important statement. Note it down or remember this statement because this can be asked for UPSC. Okay, clear? So that is it regarding nationalism and imperialism. And this is a map celebrating the British Empire. That is also, all these golden color shown here is for part of British Empire at that time. Britain had colonies all over the world. Okay, so all these are British empires. That is how mighty the British Empire was at that time. This is also again a result of imperialism. But eventually the nationalism in all these nations succeeded in ousting Britain, and now Britain is a very small country occupying the northwestern region in Europe. Okay, so that is it. So in today's class we saw how these nation states rises, how the Europe was split into different states and eventually managed to become unified, countries of Germany, Italy, etc., etc. How Britain was born, Germany, Italy was born, Bismarck, Mazzini, Cavour, etc., etc. Okay, all this. So I hope this was useful for you. At least it was something of a if you read your NCERT now, I hope it will be more easy. Okay, because I have explained difficult terms there. I have also given you some background story which is not there in your NCERT, which is essential for you to understand whatever is given here. Okay, so that is it. Thank you for joining. Again, please use my code MSRW1 in order to get 10% discount on any Unacademy subscription. Also, follow me on my Telegram channel to get the PDFs of my today's session and all other classes. Okay, so that is it. Thank you for joining me today. See you again at 8 p.m. with another topic in Unacademy app. So today we are going to see Second World War there. Alright, so see you at 8 p.m. Until then, bye bye.